A lot of time and effort goes into creating videos like this, so if you're enjoying the content, please take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel.
Old Duke had plowed the Miller farm for 15 years. He knew every fence line, every creek bed, every corner of the land. When Samuel Miller walked toward the barn each morning, Duke was already waiting, ready to work. But there was no work anymore. The wheat had failed. The soil had blown away. There was nothing left to plant. Still, every sunrise, Duke stood patiently beside the empty plow, as if tomorrow might finally be different. 9-year-old Ben climbed onto the fence and watched. "Dad, why do you hitch Duke to the plow if we aren't farming?" Samuel tightened the leather harness. "Because he doesn't understand why the fields are empty." Ben frowned. "But you do." Samuel nodded. "I do." The father gently led Duke across the barren field. The plow barely scratched the hard earth. No seeds followed behind, only memories. When they reached the end of the field, Samuel stopped. He rested his forehead against Duke's neck. "You've never failed me." The land did. That autumn, there wasn't enough hay to keep the horse through winter. Neighbors offered to buy him. Samuel refused. Instead, the entire community gathered leftover feed, one sack at a time. Enough to keep Duke alive until spring. Years later, after the rains returned, Ben became the one holding the reins. Duke was too old to pull a full day's work, but every first day of planting season, Ben harnessed him one last time. Not because the farm needed him, because gratitude deserved one more walk across the field. The Dust Bowl wasn't survived by people alone. Faithful animals carried their share of the burden too, as silent partners in a struggle they could never understand. The Porch Light Woodward, Oklahoma. October 1938. Every night just before bed, Sarah Collins lit the kerosene lantern on her front porch. Her husband smiled. "You know we're wasting fuel." Sarah adjusted the wick. "I know." "Then why do you keep lighting it?" She looked toward the dark road disappearing into the prairie, "so nobody feels alone." Word quietly spread across the county. If a traveler became trapped after sunset, or a family was forced off the road by another black blizzard, the Collins farmhouse could always be found by its porch light. No questions asked, no payment expected. One freezing November night, there was a knock at the door. Outside stood a young couple with 2 exhausted children. Their truck had broken an axle 20 miles away. Sarah welcomed them inside before they could explain. Hot soup, dry blankets, a place beside the stove. By morning, the storm had passed. The father tried to offer a few coins. Sarah gently closed his hand. "Someday. Leave your own light on." 25 years later, the couple's grown daughter bought a farmhouse in Nebraska. The very first thing she installed was a lantern hook beside the front door. Her children once asked, "Why do we always leave the porch light burning?" She smiled toward the road. "Because someone did the same for us." History remembers the great storms, the failed harvests, the endless migration. But somewhere in the darkness between those stories, there was always a small porch light waiting for strangers to become guests. The truck wasn't built to carry a family's entire life, but it had to. An iron bed frame was tied to the roof. A rocking chair hung from the tailgate. 2 battered suitcases, a sack of flour, family quilts, cooking pots, and a wooden cradle were squeezed into every empty space. 7-year-old Billy sat between them all, holding a mason jar filled with soil from the family's Oklahoma farm. His mother had collected it just before they left. "So we'll always carry home with us," she had whispered. For 6 days, they followed Route 66 west. The engine overheated. A tire burst outside Amarillo. The family slept beside the highway, cooking beans over a small fire, while hundreds of other overloaded trucks rolled toward California. Each one carried another family chasing the same dream. Every morning, Billy asked the same question. "Are we there yet?" His father always smiled. "Soon," even when he wasn't sure anymore. One afternoon, they stopped beside an abandoned service station. An elderly couple sat quietly next to a broken-down truck. The man removed his hat. "We've been here 3 days. No money for a new tire. Without hesitation, Billy's father opened the family's toolbox. It contained only one spare inner tube, their only one. He handed it to the stranger. His wife looked at him in surprise. "What if ours blows?" He shrugged. "Then maybe somebody helps us." The old man's eyes filled with tears. "You've just saved our journey." That evening, the families shared supper beside the road. Children laughed together while their parents traded stories about farms swallowed by dust and towns left behind forever. No one knew each other's names. They didn't have to. They all belonged to the same road. As darkness fell, Billy unscrewed the mason jar. He held the Oklahoma soil in his hands for one last moment before gently sprinkling a little beside the highway. His mother frowned. "Why'd you do that?" Billy smiled. "So home can come with everyone." His father quietly looked away. Years later, Billy would forget the endless miles. He would forget the broken tire. He would even forget the hunger. But he never forgot that lonely stretch of Route 66, where two desperate families, each with almost nothing, still found something worth giving away. Because sometimes the richest people on the road were those who had the least left to lose. The Potato Train Orphans. Idaho Falls, Idaho, 1923. The Union Pacific ran potato extras each fall, open gondola cars heaped with spuds for shipment east. In the hard winter of 1923, over 40 kids were found riding the trains. Most were farm kids from failed homesteads, hopping cars to pick up spilled potatoes along the tracks to feed their families. Yardmaster Tom Sullivan, a widower, couldn't arrest them. Instead, he built a shack by the roundhouse and started Tom's Potato School. Kids could fill a sack if they stayed for 2 hours of reading and math by the stove. He taught from Sears catalogs and train timetables. Over 300 kids passed through that winter. 12 got hired by the railroad later. The last one, Eddie Nunez, became mayor of Idaho Falls in 1961. He kept Tom's chalkboard in his office. The Ash Garden, Yakima, Washington, May 19, 1980. When Mount St. Helens blew, Yakima got 5 inches of ash in 3 hours. It was noon but turned to midnight. The city choked, hospitals filled with asthma cases. 68-year-old Japanese-American farmer George Tsutakawa remembered the Dust Bowl. He and his sons fired up their irrigation pumps and ran them full blast into the air. The water knocked ash down. Then he told every neighbor, "Plant now. Ash is pulverized rocks, sterile but full of minerals." While everyone else shoveled, George's community planted potatoes, onions, and daikon in the ash that day. They were the only crop in the county that year. He gave seed to anyone who'd work. The Ash Garden fed 200 families. The USDA wrote a paper on it. George said, "Volcano, give us soil. We give back food." January 1918, New York City. WWI. Herbert Hoover ran the U.S. Food Administration. Food will win the war. He asked Americans to save wheat, meat, fat, ship it to the Allies. The problem? New York Harbor. 40 warehouses full of grain for France, but no wagons. The army took every truck. The horses were in France. On January 12th, a blizzard hit. 2 feet of snow. The trains stopped. The grain would rot by Monday. 1 million pounds. The warehouse foreman's son was Anthony Tony Russo, 14 Italian. He had a wagon and a horse. Old Pete, 22 years old. His father said, "We can't move it. We'll die." Tony said, "Pete's old, but he knows the way." For 3 days, Tony and Pete ran. From Pier 42 to the Jersey barges. 1 mile in the snow. 200 pounds a trip. 40 trips a day. He slept on the wagon. He fed Pete his own bread. By January 15th, 24,000 pounds moved. Enough to load 1 barge. The barge went. France ate. Hoover wrote, "The spirit of one boy moved a nation." Tony died in 1975. He never told anyone. The warehouse log says, "Moved by T. Russo, wagon." January 12th to 15th. A Montana homestead finds hope through resourcefulness, 1931 to 1935. Beginning in 1931, Evelyn Carter and her family struggled to survive on a small ranch near Billings, Montana, as the Great Depression drove livestock prices down, and steady ranch work became difficult to find. With 4 children to care for and limited income, Evelyn searched for practical ways to keep food on the table and support her family. Using leftover fencing materials and other available supplies, she built simple rabbit hutches and began raising rabbits on the property. The animals were inexpensive to care for, feeding on hay, garden leftovers, and wild plants gathered nearby. Before long, the growing rabbit population provided a dependable source of meat for family meals. Evelyn also made careful use of every part of the animals. She prepared the pelts for sale or trade, exchanging them with local buyers for necessities such as flour, kerosene, and other household supplies. She taught her daughters valuable skills in food preparation and preserving resources, ensuring that very little went to waste. As the rabbit project expanded, it became an important source of both nutrition and supplemental income. By 1935, the family's efforts helped them weather difficult economic times, while Evelyn's husband found seasonal work when available. Her determination and practical thinking turned a modest backyard operation into a lifeline, demonstrating how creativity, hard work, and careful stewardship helped many rural families endure the hardships of the Great Depression. Finding hope in the harvest. An Ozark family's resourcefulness, 1933 to 1936. Around 1933, in the Arkansas Ozarks, sharecropper Silas Monroe and his family struggled through another difficult cotton season. Poor harvests and mounting debt left them with few resources, forcing them to rely on the land for extra food during the long winter months. After the first frost each year, Silas and his family gathered ripe wild persimmons from nearby woodlands. Once the fruit had fully softened, they transformed it into nourishing food such as pudding, fruit preserves, and dried fruit sheets that could be stored for later use. Whenever possible, they sweetened their recipes with sorghum syrup or whatever sugar they could obtain. The homemade persimmon butter became valuable in the local community. Silas often exchanged jars with neighbors for essentials like eggs, cooking fat, or other supplies. His wife also taught their children how to recognize ripe persimmons and avoid eating the bitter, unripe fruit, passing along practical knowledge that had been shared for generations. These seasonal harvests helped supplement the family's simple meals of cornbread, beans, and other basic staples, providing extra nutrition when food was scarce. As conditions slowly improved by the mid-1930s, the tradition of gathering wild persimmons continued, not only as a way to stretch the family budget, but also as a cherished part of their heritage. The Monroe family story reflects the resilience, ingenuity, and community spirit that helped many rural families endure the hardships of the Great Depression. Turning simple fruit into hope. A migrant mother's resourcefulness, 1934 to 1937. In 1934, near Fresno, California, Maria Lopez and her family struggled to make ends meet while living in a migrant labor camp during the Great Depression. Her husband found only seasonal work picking citrus, and his earnings were often not enough to cover the family's basic needs. Rather than letting leftover fruit go to waste after the harvest, Maria gathered oranges and lemons that remained in the orchards. Using a shared community oven, she baked homemade pies, empanadas, and other simple treats. Instead of selling them for cash, she often traded them with neighbors for essentials such as milk, flour, clothing, or help watching her children. The camp became a place where families supported one another. Some shared extra fruit, while others contributed dough, sugar, or cooking supplies. Maria gladly exchanged recipes and invited neighbors to bake together, helping everyone make the most of limited resources. As the years passed, her baking earned a reputation throughout the camp. By 1937, the goods she prepared became a dependable source of bartering, allowing her family to obtain small necessities, including shoes and school items for her children. Maria's creativity showed that even the simplest ingredients could provide more than food. They could build community, strengthen friendships, and offer hope during difficult times. Her story reflects the resilience and generosity that helped many migrant families endure the hardships of the Great Depression. In 1864, Sarah Whitman received a folded letter sealed with the Union's crest. Her husband, Corporal James Whitman, had fallen at Cold Harbor. She sat on the porch of their Kentucky farmhouse, the summer air heavy, reading the words through blurred eyes. Left with 2 young children and a farm in disrepair, Sarah shouldered the burden alone. She rose before dawn to milk cows, chop wood, and plow the fields, work once shared with her husband. Neighbors offered help, but Sarah insisted on standing strong, believing her children needed to see that survival was possible, even in grief. Each Sunday, she dressed her children in their best clothes and walked them to the small churchyard, where she laid wildflowers on James's empty grave marker. Though she never remarried, Sarah kept his memory alive in stories told by firelight, her voice steady even when her heart ached. The Windmill and the Winter Cellar, Nebraska, 1939. On a remote homestead outside Kearney, Nebraska, 11-year-old Clara Mae Jensen helped her father repair the creaking windmill that pumped water for their livestock and garden. With blizzards sweeping across the plains and the economy still reeling, the family relied on their root cellar, dug deep into the earth and lined with straw, to store potatoes, carrots, onions, and jars of pickled beets and sauerkraut. Clara's mother baked bread in a Dutch oven buried in hot coals, and taught her children to make soap from wood ash and tallow. Her older brothers trapped rabbits and patched boots with scrap leather, while Clara stitched rag dolls from flour sacks for her younger siblings. The windmill, groaning in the cold wind, became a symbol of their endurance, turning even in the harshest storms. Years later, Clara wrote, "That cellar held more than food. It held our hope, sealed in jars."